Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
Know someone who could benefit from our business expertise? Send them our way. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Paradigm Playbook's podcast. I hope you guys have been enjoying the subject matters. My name's Dave Kozak. I'm alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Morning, David. Ready to rock and roll?
I am ready. This is one of my favorite subjects. Today, we're going to discuss management styles. We'll bring a little micromanagement. We'll bring a little meticulous management, and we'll bring the different kind of varieties of managers you see. Also, some of the needs and requirements to be a good manager, and also some of the things that make people fail at management.
Yeah, it's a great topic. Difficult to find kind of a kickoff spot.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? If you start with general management, let's start here. Let's differentiate between leadership and management.
Yeah. So to me, leadership is a role of growing and teaching those around you. Management is a responsibility for the performance of those around you or those under you, or however you put it. I don't know that I have a distinction, because I think in terms of being a good manager, you should be a good leader, but it doesn't always happen that way, right?
Yeah, and should is a tough word.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to be a manager to be a leader. Anybody can lead within a team.
Without question.
And it doesn't have to be the quarterback, the coach, the captain. It can be anybody on the team becomes that leader. And then it's more of lead by example. And, so they say that the only true definition of a leader is they go first. So That's what makes you a leader.
And I also like they eat last.
Yeah. So it's you dig in, but then management is, and then some people say, you lead people, you manage activities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another way of looking at it. But in our discussion here, we're going to assume that everybody's running a business. Most of our audience is small business. So we're going to say, 5 to 15 employees. And so how are we going to lead? Let's just stick with 10 different people, different personalities in different roles, one manager. Because that's what we're dealing with a lot in our clients.
Yeah. And this is where I got into trouble, Steve, in my own business, where when is the right time to assign new management? And when are you, like the Peter principle, like when do you reach your level of incompetence in management? And it can be a difficult thing to like, hey, I'm there. I can't manage this much. I got to turn this over to somebody else. And so there's the micromanager, right? And when I say micromanager, I think it comes with a negative connotation, but I think you have to watch out for that, because micromanagement in some cases can be a decent thing. Micromanaging processes as opposed to people, I always think is better, but it does come with this negative connotation. What that means is they're sort of in everything down to the granular level, which is an absolute stifling environment for the manager as well as the employee, right? So what I always like to say is you can micromanage processes, but you can't micromanage people, because then the people are not going to follow. They're going to get irritated. But sometimes you can micromanage processes to make sure that everything is going according to plan. I think that's another distinction that I want to make before we even dig in further, is management is managing a process and people, or people and a process. It can be one or both, but ultimately that's what, in my eyes, determines a manager.
Will you allow that management can be done without directives? So can you manage by, let's just take it to a full extreme. Can you manage with only questions?
Yes.
Okay. So where people...
Matter of fact, I think that's the best management.
I agree. But so I'm trying to get past the person who says, I'm the manager, I need to tell you what to do. And I think that is what stifles the growth of the employee is, and too many people, when they say, well, he's micromanaging me, what he means is he's telling me everything to do.
Yeah.
Instead of challenging me or offering me conversation or asking me why I'm doing that. So there's a different way to manage people. And you can, I mean, you've done this. You can manage a conversation in a room without ever telling anybody what to say or think, but you can control that. So controlling your whole business is, another definition of management, and there's nothing bad about that. And if you're controlling the micro factors within the business, then that could be considered micromanagement. And I think that's where you're going with saying it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. What you put it far more eloquently than I did, which is rare, but
yes. Eloquent and I don't go together.
So I think there's another piece here, right? That a manager's job is accountability to an end result. If you haven't defined an end result, oftentimes it leads to micromanagement because you're kind of floundering around, not knowing what to do. So that person's in there telling you what to do without clear direction. So if you want to be an effective and good manager, first thing you got to do is establish and set the target, right? What are you working towards? How are you getting there? What are the projects that you can take on in a period of time? How much time do you need to spend managing a project, managing people, managing results, right? And I think the biggest issue that happens in small business is a singular manager trying to be involved in too many things and not having enough overall management. And, this goes back to the E-myth and the idea of the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur, right? Or the business owner or whatever. Visionary, right? Well, the technician is doing the job on a regular basis, right? That's doing the thing that causes the end result. So whether it's sales and you're making phone calls or sending emails, whether it's processing mortgages and you're doing the actual paperwork, or whether it's coaching a class as a small business owner in the sports world, right? That's the technician. When you step up to a manager, right, you can still spend time doing the class, but you can't do a full workload of classes and expect to be an effective manager at the same time, right? I just don't see that, right? There has to be a give and take in that. So how much you need managers and specifically in the sports business is completely dependent on what you're trying to do.
I'm pretty sure that very often in the sports business, you start off and the manager is the most knowledgeable about the skills of the technician, the coach.
Yep.
You get to a point where you can't be and you shouldn't be the most knowledgeable in a technician. You will not find the manager of a plumbing business being the most knowledgeable on how to fix a leak or to connect two pipes or to plumb a building or to any of those things. The technician is the more knowledgeable. The manager's role is to get that knowledge applied functionally throughout the day. So that's what you're looking to do as a manager. Help control what they do, but not tell them, solder this to this, or, tell them to throw their hands this way or pitch a baseball or grip the ball. You've got to, that's the micro part of it that's not good. But getting them to communicate better with customers, that's the micro part that you do have to do. So it's a difficult conversation.
Well, and it's a crazy thing you brought it up the way you did, because the direction I was going was like, when do you need the manager and who is the manager? And this is where I think it gets tricky in small business, because in most small businesses, no matter it's sports, it's insurance, it's, whatever, your most knowledgeable person by virtue of knowledge becomes the manager, right? But is not maybe not the right person to do it. And at what point in the growth is that person necessary? And so this is where I think a lot of small businesses fails. They don't hire an operations manager. They don't hire someone that is a true manager, as opposed to elevate their best technician into that management role, whether they can do it or not. Right. So say you put your best coach as a manager, but they don't have a clue as to how to communicate well with schedules and with visions and things like that. What they do is they get in the box and they teach a specific subject very well, right? That can have devastating consequences, right?
Yeah, and I think what they end up doing, you move them to manager, they're still more comfortable with the coaching, so they're telling the coaches, here's how you ought to coach Johnny, and here's what's wrong with his swing, or this is why he can't do a back handspring, and you have to extract yourself. We're unique at Grand Slam. We talk about Grand Slam all the time, but our operations manager has a fair amount of knowledge about baseball, but never talks technique. Yeah. We'll never talk technique with any of our coaches.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing because, there's, and this is another thing that we talk about right butt, right seat. We've said that 1,000 times. And that's not always easy to identify, especially when you have, let's say your standard person makes 30, 40, 50 grand a year, and a manager should make, I don't know, let's say 50, 60, 70 grand a year, right? And you've got your best performing coach who you want to reward. And so the promotion is there to become the manager. But that person's not the right fit for it. I've been caught in that world before where, if I promote the person who really should be the manager because they have all those skills and techniques and tactics, but they're like 6 man on the totem pole right now, they bypass everybody. How do you manage that? And how do you manage morale and things like that? It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I think sometimes you need to get out of the hierarchical, org structure that we look at in a traditional corporate setting, and in small settings, it's more of a matrix organization, and you want people to advance. You want them to do more things. So, and it seems natural to move them from coach to manager and what we should do is moving them from coach to part-time marketing. They're out giving speeches, or they're, talking to groups. We can find other things and let them raise their income level without moving them to a position that, as you said, the Peter principle, where they, we're pushing them to their level of incompetence.
Yeah.
And then that's a bit scary.
So Steve, that reminds me of a great story, I think, where I was in my junior year of college at Franklin and Marshall, and I had slipped up the year before, and I had to drop a class, and I was a credit short. And the one thing that I said to my parents is I'm out in 4, but there's no question I'm going to get there. And at F&M, you could take 4 classes. They were all worth a credit. You needed 32 credits. So that was the deal. So when you drop one too late, you can't pick another one up because you're too far behind. So I was down a credit, and I went to I don't know if it was my dean or counselor, there's a student liaison, transcript liaison. And I said, listen, I want to get an internship. I wanted to count for credit, and I want to try and build something here. And they were like, well, you're business economics dual major, find something that is business related and put together a report or I was able to design it essentially and present it. And upon presentation, they would either authorize or not authorize for credit. So I found this company in Denver, Pennsylvania. It was a travel trailer, so camper manufacturer. And it was a small family owned company for 40 years that just got bought out by 4 partners, and they were going to come in and revolutionize this business. And I was like, man, this is crazy. And they put an ad out for an intern. So I went in and sat with them, and they were like, we want an intern. We're just not sure. We don't know where we need help yet because we just bought this company. And I said, okay. So I presented to the owners of the company, the 4. I said, well, why don't we do this? Because we don't know where I'm supposed to be. Why don't I spend 6 months with sales and marketing, 6 months with finance, 6 months with manufacturing, and 6 months with this under the CEO kind of overall management. and I'll sort of build these pre-training management like models for them. And they thought it was brilliant at Sunline. They were like, oh my God, now I'm a junior. And, I'm like, I'm just trying to get this thing passed for credit. So I'm not, to me, it was an obvious. So I went back to my professors and they were like, wait, you're actually going to be able to do that? And I said, yeah, it's been improved on both sides. Like, let's go. And they thought it was brilliant. So full steam ahead. I spent 6 months, the first 6 months in sales and marketing. I was doing everything from building the brochures to pricing out trailers to negotiating deals between retailers and these yards. The next 6 months I spent in the finance world, understanding the returns, understanding the profit margin, the borrowing, and all this stuff. The following 6 months, and I did this internship for 2 straight years in kind of junior and senior year. And it led to a job offer, which is the ultimate goal. But the next 6 months in manufacturing, I showed up to work every day, boots on. I was down on the manufacturing line. There were 16 stations along the manufacturing line to build a travel trailer. It took 7 days from start to finish, from the axle to building the sidewalls to putting the electricity in to putting the gas lines in, all this stuff. So, and this thing would move down this giant warehouse, and I worked at every single station for a week. So I could tell you how to sell them. I could tell you how to account for them. I could show you how to build them. And then the last 6 months was working with the CEO and just, learning how to manage a company. End result in what I created for them was to be on a track for C-level or on managerial. You had to go through that 2-year process of essentially management training so that your competency level was above board with every single of the major subject areas of the company. And so I think that to go back to what we're saying in the small business environment, if you don't send them to do some marketing and to do some public speaking, you don't send them to the books and you're not sharing that stuff, you can't create managers, right? That's just what has to happen.
It's really interesting, and you kind of short-circuited 2 years of a career, or fast-tracked two years of a career, which is pretty clever of you. I think getting people to do what they're better at, more enjoyable, and at the same time getting the manager to listen in on what's being told at the technician level, at the coach level, so that you can understand that when there comes up a dispute or a question from a customer, that the manager actually understands why. It's like, my daughter's upset because she never gets to pitch. Well, she's not here on Thursdays, and we do all of our pitching on Thursdays, and she hasn't made those. But if you don't understand that as a manager, so you do have to understand all those little pieces and how the whole thing goes together. And I think that's important. 2 other things that came to mind while you were talking. One is, and dig into this just for a minute if you could, the idea, and there's a great book, and I don't know what it is, but on servant leadership. So it's, leading from the back of the pack. What are your thoughts?
Do you want your business to thrive? Visit us at paradigmplaybook.com and contact us today for expert assistance.
So the best motivator that I've ever seen in my organization is when, let's say we had to make 1,000 phone calls as a company. Something happened. We needed to communicate with every client, and we had an obligation. We were acquiring a new business or doing something, and the job was laid out. The email's going to go out. We need to follow up with a phone call. We need a personal touch to every client. First thing I do is take my block of people that I'm going to call, right? We're all doing this. We're starting at noon, and it's 4-hour race. So I don't know if it's the servant leadership mentality, but I'm in the trench. And I have a picture in my office, and it has 3 guys with a strap over their shoulder in a line, and they're pulling a desk, and the manager is pointing like forward march, and there's a picture directly below it where there's an empty desk, and there's now a fourth guy in the line. He's out in front, and same finger pointing forward, but he's pulling the strap at the same time. And so to me, like, people don't know necessarily how hard to work. I shouldn't say that. It's not that they don't know how hard to work. They may not have the motivation to work as hard as you would work. So by getting out in front and doing it with them, being part of the workload when it's necessary, you're teaching that at the same time. So I don't really know that I get servant leadership, but one of the things I focus on is trying to get crap out of my people's way. Like, how much stuff can I take
so that is, so I consider that servant leadership. So if you're going to an employee and saying, listen, you're really good at this, I need you to do more of this. What do we have to take off your desk so you can spend more time? It's, you know what, if this is your best closer, and I did this, I had, we had a game changer program that we were working with sports facilities of, up to 1 million square feet. So big facilities. And I didn't care where they were in the country. I had one person that I wanted for them to do that. I had to get them territorial coverage at their base area to do that and move people. And so that's another way you can grow, by moving things. But you go to them and say, okay, what can I do to make you more effective at what I want you to do? And I believe that and so you're propping them up. And I kind of look at that as servant leadership.
Yeah. The other thing, and this kind of is a pivot to my management style, which I don't know how you classify mine, as whether it's servant leadership, whether it's just trying to be as effective as possible. I study leadership. I learn constantly every single day. I'm working on new leadership tactics and trait, and just trying to get better. But one big thing I implemented in my organization, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago, was the idea that anybody can talk about a problem, right? Anybody can identify a problem. But if you come to me with a problem, you also have to come to me with your idea of a solution. And I oftentimes try and make it 3 solutions. But what I've really tried to empower my people is, rather than bringing me 3 solutions and me having to make that decision, bring me the best solution, and I'll support you in that, as long as it makes sense from a leadership. So don't come to me with a problem without a solution. And so my people know, hey, they're going to come. Here's the problem. Here's what I think we should do. Now it's a go. I've empowered them at the same time. I've given them, they're learning that management in their own right.
You always use the term lift while you climb.
Yeah.
I think that, and so I like that. I think you can also flip that and say, because you can't always be lifting and pushing people, you have to climb yourself. So if you're showing that you're growing, then everybody wants to follow with that, and they see where that's going. There's a couple other things that really come to mind when it comes to management. One is, in the book Fish, they refer to sweaty palm conversations. And that's like, someone's not good at something and nobody wants to tell him. Nobody, you know what? He's such a nice guy. It's like, why? It's like, yeah, all the kids like him, but he's not a good coach. He's not getting us to where we want. We're not getting the new signups or whatever it is. So I think that's a skill, and a necessary skill of management, is to be able to have that sweaty palm conversation that brings a situation to light, but also provides a bit of a solution about how we're going to get past that.
Yeah. There is no benefit to a sweaty palm conversation without the idea, directive, or outcome that you're looking for. So that's first and foremost, right? Meaning, don't just come tell somebody, hey, you're not good at this.
No, the idea is to craft a solution, not, place blame.
Well, and, if you go back to Patrick Lencioni, I mean, the 5 dysfunctions of the team, fear of conflict is one of that. Like, you have to be willing to be okay in uncomfortable situations as a manager, because you're going to be put in them, right? Whether it's a refund of a client, whether it's taking the heat from a client, whether it's having to tell somebody they messed up and here's what we're going to do about it. Those sweaty palm conversations, albeit terrible and not fun to have, are 1,000% necessary. And that takes me to Brian Tracy's Eat the Frog. So when I have to have a conversation like that, it's a 9 a.m. conversation. It is something that I'm doing first thing in the morning. I'm coming prepared. I'm rehearsing what I'm going to talk about, how I'm going to position it, how I'm going to frame it, and deliver. So, and sometimes we have sweaty palm conversations on Tuesday mornings in front of everybody. We have sales meetings every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. And on those conversations, you're coming to the table and you're telling me your performance, what you did, how you did it, why you did it. And I will not back down in that meeting. And here's the other thing. If you want to be a good manager and a good leader, you have to have done it. You have to have lived it. You have to have done it and been through the misery, because it's very easy to sit in the ivory tower and say, you're not doing what I told you to do. But if you've never done that and you're trying to tell someone what they should do to do it, you don't have the experience to do that. And that's a huge thing. Huge thing. You look at any job posting anywhere. What's the number one criteria to be eligible to apply for that job? It's experience.
Yeah.
Right. You hear the gripe of young professionals all over the world that they want experience, but I can't get the job to get the experience. Right. And so as a manager, if you haven't had the experience, you have to be very intelligent and very, very careful to how you tell someone to do something, especially if they know you haven't been in that role. Now, I've made 250 calls a week. I've done the dialing. I've done the face-to-face meetings. I've done every single part of the business that I have trained people to do now. So when I speak, they know I've lived it. So you can either be successful by listening and doing and following, or you can fight me and I can tell you you're not going to be successful and you'll weed yourself out of the business.
There's so much that goes into management, and part of it is the development of your employees. And one of the areas that is so important in all business and in sports business, as much as anything else, is critical thinking. And unfortunately, now we're getting young people out of school that are good at rote learning. You know, they can memorize, they can pass standardized tests, they can get good grades. But when it comes to critical thinking, that hasn't been fully developed. So it becomes incumbent on the small business owner to say, okay, how are we going to get people to start thinking critically and coming up with solutions on their own? The longer you do it for them, the less chance they have of ever doing it.
Two of my favorite quotes. What you allow is what will continue. And the second is what you think you know already that prevents you from learning. Right. So here's I want to tie all my businesses together right now. I do a podcast every Friday called College Knowledge, where I interview high-ranking professors and college deans and all that, to educate people on the college process. And our college business is faced with this idea that a liberal arts education is it's a bad thing now, right? Because it has the word liberal in it. We're not getting political here, but that's a ridiculous thing. What the liberal arts education does is it forces you to take classes outside your comfort zone. It forces you to study multiple areas, and it forces you to learn how to think and how to learn better, right? And those people that come out are a blank canvas of, I know a lot, but I'm ready to learn. Let's go do this. And they have a different mentality versus the person that went through the school that just, here's your science, here's whatever it is. And so this idea, and it was presented to me when I graduated, that I forget who said it. Maybe it was one of my first mentors, Jim Doerr, who said, I don't care if you got straight A's in college or what, your education starts today. And so I walked into his small business, and that's what he told me. My education starts today. He says, you got a base, you got whatever, you got a business degree. I don't care. Your education starts today, because now this is practical matter. This is practical, real business to business environment where you've got to learn now how that actually plays out.
And a good manager will, like you're saying, pull everybody into this process from the get-go. So when you think about how you're running a staff meeting and you bring people in there, it's very simple to sit down and say, here's the rules we're going to apply by. These are the 5 rules. I'm going to read this. Anybody have any questions? Or you can say, what should be our core values? What are the things that we can stand for? And once everybody is participating in this, and we did an interesting, I'm forgetting one of the books. Oh, it was Dan Pink. Dan Pink talks about what employees really want is, let me get this right, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's what they want out of it. Now, we mentioned this before, they're asking for salaries and vacation days and all that, but they want some kind of control over what they do. And if you're the manager, if you're taking that away, then you're hurting them. Also, as a manager, if you're not helping them get better, you're not helping them in the mastery part of it. And if they're not in the decision making, they don't understand the purpose. So autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And if you're going to add a 4th one, which Dan Pink didn't do, but inclusion's the other one. They want to be included. They don't want, it's like, around here, I'm kept in the dark. I don't know. They don't tell me anything. You know what? Tell them everything, even if they don't want to know it. I mean, there's many, many companies, and the bigger the company, the more they work on an open book. You want the financials of Berkshire Hathaway, you can get them. I mean, you can read, where they are. So include them in things. Let them understand that when you're struggling, so they need to understand that. So I think that's part of management.
Yeah, without question. One of the things that I think is very important, this will be my last thought on the subject for today.
Something tells me that this one might come back.
Yeah, we might. If one of the hardest things to do as a good leader and manager is to delegate something that may fail to someone that may fail at that thing, knowing you could do it successfully. But in that process of delegating to another person a job, maybe it should be your job, maybe not. You're teaching that person in the moment to grow and get better and to learn what the next level step may be. And a lot of people stagnate in business because the manager doesn't teach the next role, the next environment, right? And now you have a person who doesn't know what this job is. So if they get, promoted to that job because this person got promoted out, they don't really know because that manager didn't do the job to teach. And I'll use sales as the easiest way to illustrate this. I have had to watch people leave my business, prospects that never became clients that I certainly could have made clients. And I've watched thousands upon tens of thousands of dollars walk out the door, but I never stepped in. Now the people that had to battle through that are now some of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And so had they never gone through that experience, had I always jumped in and saved, always jumped in and done something, they'd still be that person that can't close that deal on their own. So you sometimes have to just let failures happen so that person grows, and knowing that the parachute's not there. Now, if I had someone walk in my door with $100 million net worth, right? I'm not going to let that person fail, but the average client, you gotta let them go sometimes.
In a book that I just finished, called Never Fly Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Great book. Waldo Waldman was an Air Force pilot, fighter pilot, and did all these things. And he tells a story about his first solo flight. And what you do is you go up there for test flights, and as long as you get, all your check downs you do, and then finally you get to go solo. And he had screwed up 3 times, and he goes up there and it's simple things. You forget to flip a light switch on the landing gear, or you forget to do these things. And he had forgotten, and, he's waiting for someone to, the captain to kind of bear down on him and say, what the heck, Waldo, you're screwing up. What the guy said to him was, everything okay at home? It's like, this isn't like you. You're a detail guy. So they did that. And then at the end of that flight, they landed. He got out of it and said, listen, you want to kill yourself in this thing? Go ahead, but I ain't going down with you. You can fly this solo. Pay attention. Go now. And they sent him on a solo. That time, everything went perfect. He did everything great. but he knew when the time was to back off. Just like you're saying, you knew when that, okay, I'm tempted to step in there, but if we're going to get the greatest growth for this company, now's the time for me to step away. I could go through another long story, but through my career, the corporate side of my career, I can definitely point to times where I kept doing something too long. And a manager has to understand when their voice goes silent. And
Yeah.
that's another topic for another day.
Yeah, we can certainly expand on this, but I think that's about the time for today, Steve. We're going to sign off.
Okay.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode and all the other episodes, please like and subscribe. Our goal here is to shift the paradigm in how you look at your business.
Okay, everybody, shift your paradigms. See you next week.
Thank you for listening. Visit ParadigmPlaybook.com to discover how we can support you and your business.